Welcome to Clone Incorrect Podcast, episode 27, with Mr. Ben Stoeger. Ben holds 8 national titles from USPSA and a lifetime ban from USPSA. Ben is verifiably one of the best shooters of all time, and I'm excited for this conversation. I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves, then we'll get started.
Rambe, I don't do anything here. I don't shoot competition, but I do have a pretty solid Dickens drill, so maybe that's why I'm here.
I'm 7-7. I'm just another T-class nobody.
I'm M1 Ting. New to the competition world. Just started Cheat Steel Challenge a couple months ago. Getting ready to step into my first USPSA match here in the next couple of weeks. So I'm here to learn and pick the brain.
I am What's Your Transfer. Most of my competition experience is in occasional 3-gun matches and club-level pistol matches. And I'm trying to find the right kind of sanctioned match to kind of sink my teeth into. So I'm interested in this conversation and where it goes.
My name is Ben Stoeger. I'm, I guess, formally a competition shooter now, but I've done competitive shooting for quite a while. I do instruction, books, teaching, that sort of thing. It's kind of my wheelhouse. Is just a lot of shooting stuff. I do my own podcast. I do digital coaching. I've got kind of my toe in a lot of stuff as far as shooting is concerned. But I'm definitely happy to be here with you guys.
So do we want to just start out with going over a little bit of where the board of director stuff is? We know you just put out video about this today. Going over some of that?
Maybe an hour ago. Well, sure. We could. I could give people kind of a general sense. I don't know what your audience knows, but there's been a long coming sort of feud inside of USPSA. I think is a good way to put it. Part of this is generational, part of it's personalities, but what's happening now in USPSA is a long time coming. So what's been going on is over the last, I suppose, year, me and many other people have started getting more and more vocally critical of the way USPSA is run as an organization. And the situation's escalated to the point where a few people have been, technically suspended, but essentially punted from the organization. And that's where that stands now. Of course, there's a lot of things happening as far as that's concerned. But like I said, this has been a long time coming feud.
So I guess one of the things that I kind of want to hear your insights on this is you say part of this is personal and part of this is generational. And
yes,
the personal side of it, frankly, is one of those things that I don't need you to comment on a whole lot for my sake, because that's like you talking about somebody in a personal sense, and that can kind of get to a slanderous territory in the wrong context. I don't need you to say stuff like that. But I do want to hear about the generation.
I'm not going to say slanderous stuff, but I'm happy to say things that I believe to be true, which sure.
Well, I'm wondering what's the balance between generational and personal is, I guess, more of my question. Like, how much is like just the old guy, the old man's club, or how much of it is like it's this one guy that's just making it miserable?
Well, I would say a lot of the personal, there's a lot of personal animus towards me because I'm a very vocal critic of a lot of people that run USPSA. I'm not going to pretend that I like these people personally, and I don't think they would pretend to like me. So there's a personal element there that you can't really deny. But it's more than that. When I say generational, it's like you've got a lot of people, and it's not just like they're all like old dudes. There's guys that are middle aged. It's not like a bunch of senior citizens that don't understand the internet or something like that. Like that's not the entirety of the USPSA board. But as a board, they don't like to take input. They don't want to. They're not interested in outside opinions, and they definitely don't like sort of public criticism. They definitely don't like that. And that's the sort of stuff that I do. So you'd say, it's not just like these old guys hate us. It's like there's people that have a very different concept of how things should work, of how you should engage in these sort of interactions with people. Whereas I'm comfortable on the internet, kind of letting it fly, whereas other people don't like that.
So is it partially, you think, kind of like not just like generational, but like maybe like a culture, like a gun culture kind of difference, that there's guys that got used to being the way they've always been with USPSA and they don't want to change it. And then a bunch of new guys get interested in it and they want to see some changes. But the guys that have been running the show for a while are like, I have no interest in actually changing anything.
Well, yes, that's true. And then the kind of the real culture clash is when is like if you make a meme that's, you know, sort of funny and punchy, like those guys hate that stuff. The BOD, they hate that like meme culture or internet culture. They really just don't like it.
Oh, they're gonna fucking hate us.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'll hate you.
Time to make some memes.
So, have we decided who runs the ex-USPSA account? Is that Jake?
From State Farm?
I have no idea. To be honest, I don't really follow or interact or care too much about, there's plenty of meme pages. Like the ex-USPSA account is useful for me. Like I like that.
Why?
Well, because I need a dyad. We need conflict. If I don't have people memeing back, then what is there to do? Like if the board of directors and their supporters just shut up, I wouldn't have anything to work with.
So, do you think it's malice or stupidity?
Both. Like, what's the
Right.
what's the difference? It's both. It's good. I mean, like at this point, like the ex USPSA account serves me. Like, yeah, go look at that account. These people are obsessed with me and a few other people. Constant memes. They're not really very effective memes. Not much engagement. And disabling the comments on an anonymous meme page is pretty much putting up the white flag. Like it's game over. But again, that stuff is useful for me. Like I find that useful because I can put out sort of really brash or really antagonistic sounding statements, and then other people talk about it and they fight about it. And what I need to do is push the conversation, the public conversation, in the direction I need it to go. And you don't do that by being, you know, really pedantic or like just the facts, ma'am. Like that kind of stuff. Like people don't give a fuck about that. So like the meme wars are useful from where I stand. But again, this is a very different point of view than the board of director type people.
Right. Now, you've been teaching, I know I listened to your podcast. You said 15 years, and I'm sure shooting. So when did you start? When did you first pick up a gun, and when did you start USPSA?
I picked up a gun as soon as I could, which was when I was 18, because my parents are, well, there's no other way to say it. They're partisan Democrats, and they hate guns. So I couldn't have any guns until they kicked me out of the house. That kind of sucked. But then they kicked me out, which was good because then I could have guns. So I did that. I started USPSA at age 21, and I'm 38 now. I'm kind of getting on in years.
That's honestly really funny that somebody like so big and influential in the shooting community today grew up in an anti-gun household. That I feel like that doesn't happen often, or maybe I just don't hear about it.
Yeah.
I don't think people talk about it. I think it happens more than we expect, because that's actually kind of similar to my like upbringing. Is like my parents, they weren't partisan Democrats, but they certainly were not comfortable with us having guns in the house until I was in my teens, and that was just kind of like a thing that like we suddenly started inheriting guns from my grandfather. But like otherwise, like I didn't grow up shooting. Like I got into it like about the time I could drive.
Have they changed their opinions at all now, would you say, now that you've, been in the shooting professional world at all for a long time?
I mean, absolutely, they've changed their opinion. I mean, so like shooting now is kind of taking me all over the world, and I have a career and all that stuff. So it's pretty difficult for them to say anything in a real negative now. I just think they in theory don't like guns, but in practice don't really have a problem with them anymore.
And back to the BOD thing, it's almost ironic that Ben has probably sold more USPSA memberships than the entire board of directors at any given time, plus their massive advertising budget.
Yeah, these people are stupid. I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah, I know there's a whole, movement going on about if you and the other guys aren't unbanned, then we're not going to renew our memberships when they expire, which hopefully gets the word across.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it a movement, but there's a few people saying that. There's a lot of people not apart from me or the other guys being banned, they're looking at USPSA as an organization now quite a lot differently. And they're like, yeah, I don't want to pay these people. There's been a few clubs have disaffiliated, that sort of stuff. A lot of people are very upset, and that's happening. There's people that want a new organization. They want new things to start up. There's just lots of conversations in that direction are happening now. So that should be interesting to see where that goes.
So what's next? I know you made a post about trying some PCSL targets, which is Max Leograndis's thing. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what do you think of that?
The targets are fine. I like them better than USPSA targets in some respects. I like how they're just physically smaller. That is a good thing. The USPSA targets are bigger than they really need to be, if you ask me. PCSL targets are interesting. I don't know how I feel about the bonus. There's the headbox K zone is like a bonus zone, or even going to fundamentally change a scoring when you shoot that zone, which is kind of weird, but it's an interesting idea.
What score is the K zone? I mean, I assume it's very similar to USPSA scoring.
I don't know exactly. I think if you shoot the K zone, it's like you only have to shoot once instead of twice. I don't know exactly.
What I saw online, I did, I'm probably going to be wrong about this and then just kind of embarrass myself. I'm pretty sure that either you only have to shoot the K zone once, or the K zone is double. Do they do hit factor scoring at all?
I don't know PCL scoring. I just tried the targets, but what I've heard is similar to what you're saying, where the K zone is a game changer fundamentally.
It is much more beneficial to shoot the K zone, but it is much smaller than obviously the rest of the chest area of the target.
Yeah, but it's kind of weird because it's pretty easy to hit accidentally because it's just above the center zone, and it's physically not a big target, and the K zone takes up pretty much the whole head. It's kind of strange. I mean, to really score it that way it's a little weird. But it's interesting.
How old is PCSL? Because I've only actually heard of PCSL in the past couple of months. Since I've been shooting USPSA for a couple years now, but I've only actually started caring about it a lot, maybe in the past 6 months, and I've just heard of PCSL. Has that been around for a while, or is it a new upstart?
I believe it's in the last 2 years. I believe so.
Okay.
It's relatively new. I got a buddy that kind of jumped on the bandwagon when it started. And it really hit my radar a year ago. So I know it's still new enough that they're still trying to work out the general rule books and stuff and what the plan of attack is.
Can someone post a target or tell me a little bit more about this? Because this is the first time hearing about PCSL.
I'll find a target online and put it in general. Yeah. And then if you guys are listening, obviously just Google PCSL target and then you can.
I'll post it on the Instagram. That's my job.
Okay. Thank you, Ethan.
Yeah. So my problem looking at PCSL is I have to shoot rifles and I don't want to shoot rifles.
That's the best part of PCSL.
So Ben, in your video you posted a couple hours ago, you were talking about the main challenge is getting the tactical guys like the Lucas Botkins to talk to, us nerds like Joel Park and yourself.
Oh no. That, believe me, that part would not be a challenge. I didn't mean to. I must have misspoke if I said that's a challenge. That would be my challenge.
Okay.
So let's say that these suspensions go through. It is the situation then is out of my hands. There's enough energy out there. People want something new. They want something different. I've trained with Lucas. I can message him. I have a relationship with him. I can put him together with those types of people, like the Lucas Botkins. And I'm not saying him specifically, but those types of industry people, I had Mike Pannone on my podcast. He's shitting all over USPSA. Any special operations background people that I know, or people that do competitive shooting in other venues, not USPSA, people that are firearms industry people that don't do competitive shooting, to a man, they think USPSA is a gong show. They think it's run by dipshits. This is what they all think. It's not really an uncommon opinion. It's just controversial to say that inside of USPSA circles, but outside of USPSA, everyone fucking thinks that. So that's what's kind of funny about it is all these people are on the same page that USPSA sucks. What I would do, I think the best role I could have is to put these people together and say, hey guys, whatever you do next, do it together. Get on the same sheet of music. Get a common rule set that makes sense. that kind of thing.
Personally, I think the common rule set thing's the biggest issue because around me, there's like a lot of I'm from like West Virginia, a lot of USPSA, not a lot of 2-gun. I have to drive like 2 hours for it. I've been to 4 separate clubs. All of them have had different rule sets. Every single club has. And if they all just got on the same fucking page.
Different rule sets for 2-gun?
Yeah, all of them.
Right. So the big thing, like two guns where it's at. So let's say some new thing pops up. I would say things like, hey, we're just going to take USPSA rules and mirror it. We're going to take the classifications and literally mirror that, just port the classification to this new thing. Maybe cut some dumb divisions or whatever, or that kind of stuff. But then there's big divisions. Like, I think you would be crazy if you started a new organization. You'd be fucking crazy if you didn't just take carry optics as is and put it in. Right? It doesn't matter what you think of carry optics. You'd be crazy not to put it in. I mean, that kind of stuff. And then say, hey, we're not doing 3-gun because people don't give a shit about that. We're going to do 2-gun. And we're going to have a classification system for 2-gun. That classification system, along with a common rule set, I think would be a game changer for 2-gun. Kind of like if 3-Gun Nation had gone on and survived. I mean, the classification system is what made 3-Gun Nation, I think, really kind of interesting and made it kind of work.
So from a little bit of the 3-gun shooting that I did, it was all in 2-gun division. So my local match would run a 2-gun division, and the only thing you weren't going to shoot was an aerial clay. Everything else, if it was a shotgun target, you'd shoot it with a handgun, right?
Right. So you can have that solution if you want, but like most people don't want to even set up the fucking clay.
I don't want to shoot 3-gun.
Right. Nobody wants to shoot 3-gun. Well, why would you?
I am sick and tired of a shotgun reloading game, right? And like it's that kind of thing that it's like matches are getting to the point where we're doing a thing that doesn't replicate the way I think about guns. And that's the problem. It's not even that the matches aren't good or they're not fun or they couldn't be interesting. It's that they're trying to replicate something that I don't think about when I'm thinking about gun usage. So like IDPA in theory should be the perfect pistol match for the Zoomer concealed carry generation, but they don't allow appendix carry, and it's a bunch of old farts with 1911s, and nobody wants to fucking talk to these guys.
And fishing vests.
Right?
And fishing vests.
Correct. Fishing vests,
Yeah.
It's an old person's match when they have a division for custom 1911s.
Right. I mean, that's another thing, like that kind of stuff. Like, should there be a new thing? You got to take a look at that. Should there be a 1911 division? I say no. Should there be, here's another one, 40 caliber limited guns. What do you do with those? There's a lot of people who are invested who have that equipment, but 40 caliber is kind of going away.
Throw them in the trash.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, you just say, hey, we're just not doing limited. Fuck limited. I mean, that'd be an interesting discussion because 40 caliber is going to kind of go away either way.
Well, and the other thing is, it's interesting because like USPSA will do something that like seems interesting for them as a concept to introduce, but then they completely fuck it. Like, if you look they allow appendix carry, right? They begin to allow appendix carry for like all divisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Super fucking cool. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Hey, can I get a fucking concealment division? Like, can I get a division that I show up to my match and all I'm doing is I'm shooting from concealment? And in my tagline, it's just I'm shooting from concealment. No fucking jerseys, none of that shit.
Right, here was my pitch. Like, these guys never listen. But as soon as they started talking about modifying the center line rule for equipment, where all the equipment has to be behind the center line of your hips, or I think they also were at the same time loosened up, say, hey, you can have magnets, you can do whatever the fuck you want, basically as far as your belt setup in production, carry optics, these sort of things. What I said was like, well, instead of doing that, why don't you just say that, hey, put your shit behind your hip bone or it's concealed, either or, I'm good with either. If you change the rule in that way, that sounds like that'd be interesting for everybody. I don't know what you think of that, but like allowing that in seemed good to me, but
it would be a hell of a lot more interesting that way. But so the local club match that I shot, because I don't want to have to go pay for any sort of club memberships or anything. So I just went to a local club match that was on practice score. I show up with a Glock and an appendix carry holster and then a battle belt with the T-Rex arms Ragnarok on it, right? So I'm like, okay, if I have to run an open belt, I can run an open belt. If I have to run concealed, I can run concealed. Well, I carry appendix, and I was told that not to use appendix because are worried about me shooting my dick off. And I'm like, I have been carrying appendix for 5 years. If I had shot my dick off, was going to shoot my dick off, I would have done it when I started carrying, not now. Right? Like,
Yeah.
shit like that they're worried, like, you're going to fucking shoot yourself in the thigh. Like, no, I know how to draw my gun. I've been doing this on a timer before I even showed up to the match, dude. Like,
That's the issue I see here. So USPSA is big here in North Dakota. Like, I have one club in the state that does 2-gun. That's all the way in Fargo, 4 hours away. Everything else close to me is USPSA or Cowboy Action. Like, that's the two big things here. So when USPSA was like, hey, we'll do appendix and we'll start allowing weapon lights, I was like, okay, that's cool. You know, now I'm maybe in the game. But my local club doesn't allow appendix at all. Like, it's in the rule book, you can do it, but the local club is like, nope, too dangerous, you're not allowed to do it.
What?
So I'm gonna argue with both of you. Carrying appendix for a competition is kind of gay. I mean, just get a fucking holster. Like, you're just.
I mean, I've got.
You can draw at home. You can dry fire draw out of your appendix holster. Doing it at a match is like, it's kind of stupid.
I'm not in the match to win though. I'm more in the match to get reps in and get the live fire and do the thing where
Are you live firing in your appendix holster?
Real quick, can I just say something? Ethan, what does USPSA stand for?
Old Guy Club Band Ben Stoeger.
You're close.
Close.
I think that USPSA, what a lot of people use it for, what I started using it for, and then I saw the classification system, and I was like, oh, I can make the cool number go up. They want to get better with their concealed carry rig. They want to get better with their home defense stuff. That's why a lot of people shoot 2-gun. Well, like around me, where I go to shoot 2-gun, it's like maybe 1/3 the gamer guys with the big muzzle brakes and the red anodized parts and everything. The other 2/3 are just guys using their regular rifle that they keep in the back of their pickup truck, and they just want to get better with their normal stuff. And I think there's room for both.
But all you're doing, carrying or drawing from appendix in a USPSA match, is just drawing and getting your mag. Like, it doesn't. Your holster doesn't matter when you're shooting the stage. So just get a fucking holster.
Yeah, but they're getting.
What's your thoughts on this, Ben?
Well, look, what you're saying is true, but you're not meeting the other half of the podcast where they're at. Like, I think, like, with if you have money for guns and ammo, obviously you can afford an on the waistband rig. You could definitely afford that. It's not an issue. But what these guys are saying is they want to shoot from fucking appendix. It doesn't really matter what I think of that. That's what they want to do.
Right.
Like, okay, whatever, guys. I don't give a fuck. I mean, I hear the safety stuff, but it's like the same conversations. If you go to a club where they don't have action shooting at all, then they see you running with a gun and they're like, oh, that's unsafe. That's bad. You can't do that.
You dry out, kid.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same sort of discussion. It's like, listen, we do this all the time. This is safe. It's okay. And it's like, am I going to tell some dude that carries appendix, like, you can't shoot appendix? Like, no, like, I don't really give a fuck if he shoots appendix or not. But frankly, whatever, it's his thing.
That's fair. That's why you're here and you're smarter than me.
Well, I'm not smarter than you. I'm just saying I don't care. Like, what you're saying is true, though. You're like, what you're doing is dumb. You're going to shoot 6 stages. You get 6 reps on your draw. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, yep. You're not wrong, but you got to listen to the other side of the conversation saying, I want to shoot appendix. Like, okay. It's like you're going to talk people out of like chocolate being their favorite flavored ice cream or something. Like, that doesn't happen. They want to shoot appendix. Like, whatever. Let them shoot appendix. Who cares?
And I guess it's more of a cultural thing for me as well with this. So like the match that I shot was specifically where I was told no appendix, was a club level match where all of the draws had to be concealed. And I would not have been able to complete the match unless somebody had a holster of just like a pancake Kydex bullshit to put on. No, this is a club level small, like, local match. This was not USPSA.
An outlaw match.
It was an outlaw type match.
Wait. What? This was a USPSA match?
Correct. Yeah, it was just, dude, it was weird as shit.
They required concealment, but said no appendix as an outlaw match? That's fucking weird, honestly. That doesn't make sense.
There was a whole crew of dudes that rolled up, right? And they were told no appendix, and they all got in their cars and drove home. And I was like, well, I already paid the dude my fucking money. I'm not going to go ask for my money back. And somebody's like, I'll loan you a holster if you want to finish the match. I'm like, okay, cool. So, like, I borrowed a holster and finished the match, and I placed mid-pack despite shitty footwork. But it was still, like, kind of, like, one of these things of, like, hey, I've been carrying like this for fucking years, man. Like, why am I getting told if this is a concealment-based match and this is my most comfortable method of concealment? Why am I getting told to not do that? And I would like to work with my carry gun, with my carry rig, you know? So if I'm choosing to carry like my P365, and I usually carry that in a Filster Enigma, I want to be able to show up to a match and do that. I feel like that's the thing for a lot of common guys in the gun space is let me use what I actually fucking use. So, given that, do you think that's something that, like, I'm alone in thinking? Is that something that, like, you would want to participate in? If, like, hey, this is a weekend match, like, would you do that, right? Would you take your personal carry gun and go and do that kind of a match once a month?
That's what got me into shooting. Is that what you're talking about? It's like, hey, I want to shoot like a real gun, like a gun I can go buy at a store that people actually carry, that like not some like unsafe trigger or something that, you know, for legal reasons you wouldn't want to carry. Like, I want to learn to shoot a real gun. It's like another hobby I have is sports cars. I think to me, it's more interesting to drive a street car on all season tires really aggressively than to drive a race car. Like, that's more interesting to me, to learn to drive like a more practical car. Like with shooting is the same. Like I got into shooting in IDPA with a Beretta because I'm like, I had a Beretta that was a reasonable practical gun to me, and they had a sport where that could be a competitive thing. To me, it's really a shame. It's really a shame that USPSA doesn't have a division for like lightly modified guns that people actually carry. They don't have that. They can say they do, but everybody knows that's bullshit.
A huge shame. It's a huge shame.
Yeah, it's stupid.
That would make an interesting division, but the best we can do is a solid brass weapon light.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it's like I would rather shoot guns where the trigger is meaningfully restricted, where the capacity is like I don't give a shit about like buying aftermarket base pads to make my gun hold more rounds and getting a really flat follower to get an extra round into the magazine to make the magazine less reliable so I can do well in competition. Like, that shit to me is stupid. Just use the factory magazines, like that kind of stuff. Like there's
well, is it like also kind of get into like stage design? Like, do we really need stages where we have like 30 targets to engage and you need to do 3 reloads, right? Or is it like, would it be better to have a stage with 10 targets that are actually reasonably challenging shots to make a good hit on, right?
Well, yeah.
Like, do those kind of things. Like,
I mean,
like,
I don't disagree.
You're going to just burn ammo.
Having an interesting stage beats having a big stage.
That's the problem with 3-gun.
Yeah, I mean, that really is the problem.
We're going to have 30 shotgun clays every single stage.
Yeah.
Like, that's why 2-gun is, like, I think the winner on that. So I guess given on the note that we had with, like, carry guns at matches and stuff, how closely does your concealed carry gun represent what you take to a match? Or are you like, is it similar, or do you just have the mindset of like shooting is shooting, like fuck it, man?
Well, it's a Glock 17 with iron sights.
Okay,
like that with the same trigger as the Glock 34 that I will shoot for classes and shoot in matches.
Can I ask why you don't carry a dot?
Carrying a dot is not. Like, I don't see the advantage to a dot for a carry gun. Not really. Not in practical terms. I mean, I see disadvantages, but I don't really see an advantage. Not really.
I shoot way better with a dot, man. I shoot way better with a dot.
Sure, I shoot better with a dot under certain circumstances at close range. The dot's really a liability to me, as far as I'm concerned.
For me, I and I guess this is just maybe like the way my eyes work, and also the fact that like you have a lot more time behind a gun and muscle memory behind a gun to know how to shoot better than I could ever shoot.
No, it's not that.
It's why you're the guest and the guy that is like the inspiration for tons of people around the country for shooting, and I'm an idiot with a fucking meme page.
You're not an idiot. Come on now.
But like I've got to the point that like I know that the dot is one of those things that like for me I can keep up with it. I know how to make sure that this thing stays working, and if I'm presented a position of like, oh, like I need to actually make a really challenging shot in a concealed carry circumstance, because it could happen. Or if adrenaline gets the better of me, because frankly, I thought I was better at stress inoculation than I really was, and oh God, I have to shoot somebody, I would much rather have a dot on the gun and make that red dot just live in the guy's chest and start stitching him up, rather than like try to find a front sight post. And like I probably could find a front sight post, but I can find a dot a hell of a lot easier. And for me, and for the way I think about this, it makes sense. It doesn't mean I can't shoot guns with irons, but I would prefer to carry with an optic. So it's interesting that you work with irons on a carry gun.
I think the best compromise would be just to carry two guns and have one of the guns have a dot on it and have the other one have irons, and you can just draw whichever one you see fit for the situation.
Well, honestly, to me, the way my brain works, the biggest advantage of the dot is low light. That's the biggest advantage that you're going to have in practical settings.
For me, it helps with the target focus and being able to just lock onto the target and not have my eyes play games with me. And it doesn't matter with night sights, fibers, whatever. The dot is so much easier for that on me. Like it works better for me. And it's possibly just me being stupid, or being inexperienced, but
it's the context in which you use the gun. So for example, with iron sights, you know how you have a good sense of where the gun is at and you know where the gun's pointed, even if you're not looking right down the sights, right? Because you can see the position of two sights. It's of the front and rear sights. So like you look at a dude who's not trained at all, like they can line up iron sights quicker than they can line up a dot with zero training, right? Because they can see everything. They don't have to like look through the glass and like find the dot and understand how that works. Like at speed, what you see is like when you draw the gun at, you know, again, at close range, you're going to see where that gun's at really quickly without, I mean, like there's no need to like look through the tube and hunt for the dot. You see the sights right away up close. And for me, most other people I talk to is like 10 yards and in, if you're not doing precise, like eyeball type shooting, you're going to have an easier time with iron sights. Like the dot really is a hindrance at close range, I think.
Definitely makes sense, because with a dot, if you're not precisely behind it and you don't see the dot, well, sorry, you don't know where you're aiming. With irons, you can like,
correct.
Your brain does do the work. It's like, oh, well, the front post is to the left of the rear iron sights, so I'm aimed to the left of the target, and you can make those adjustments. I can definitely see an argument for both ways. I think at the end of the day, it's like fucking everything else with guns.
I'm not saying that iron sights are objectively better, or that I would shoot better scores on a test that someone else builds with iron sights. Like what I'm saying is like inside of 10 yards, I'm better with the iron sights, as are most people. And like, there's no reason to put a dot on my gun that just makes the gun bigger.
Well, and I don't think anybody's.
I don't need that.
I don't think anybody's trying to say that at all. I kind of side with you on the dot thing a little bit. I'm in that dot curious stage.
Here's another way to put it. Have you watched you notice that guys with dots tend to prefer to draw to long targets and work their way in, whereas guys with iron sights typically do the opposite. They start close and work their way out.
Yes.
That's like, again, that's not for no reason. The way dots work, when you draw them, it's like either you see it or you don't. So you might as well see it on a long target and then work your way in and start ripping as you get closer. Once you build your index and your grip and you know everything's good, you can start really ripping as you work your way to close targets. Iron sights, it's way easier to start close and work your way out, because on the close targets, you can just start hammering them just with the outline of the gun. And then as like the gun's mid transition, it's way easier to pick up those sights as you're transitioning the gun than it is with a dot. I mean, that's just a much easier circumstance to shoot.
I have an interesting, I guess, kind of anecdote on that. So I spent a good 5 years working at my local gun shop, and at a pretty good sized metropolitan area. And we would get a lot of law enforcement customers. And I was talking to a lot of coppers that were working with people that were going through academies. And I said this on the last episode, but I was from Denver, and so I was talking to a guy at Denver PD, and he said that of the new hires for their new academy at that time, which I think was about 2019, all the new hires, 90% of them are running dots and shooting better with dots than irons.
Everyone will.
Yeah,
It depends on the circumstances in which you test it.
Correct.
So if we're doing distance shooting with unrestricted time, people shoot better with dots. All right. If you're doing close range shooting with a time limit, untrained people shoot better with irons, objectively better. They actually did a study on this in Texas, like an actual university study. See, the problem in the gun shop, you're dealing with a self-selected group of people. So you have cops that are the most interested in shooting that are coming in and talking to you about I'm trying to help these guys with this, help these guys with that. The dots are great, this and that. I encounter those cops too. That is not most cops. That is not most people.
I agree with you. I'm going to agree with you on that. I think the question that comes with that conversation, though, is he wasn't talking to me about people he's helping at the academy. He was talking about academy numbers. 90% of people enrolled in the academy at Denver PD at that point were all running Glocks with RMRs.
Right. That's fine, but you'd have to look at the way they're testing their shooting.
And maybe they're training these people from the scratch to run dots better. Right? Maybe they're focused.
I haven't seen that.
Maybe they DPD is a department that thinks very highly of themselves, and they think very highly of the way they try to approach training. So they will take time to invest in good red dot training. So if they're going to teach people red dot, they're going to at least go to somebody who's worth talking to about a proper red dot class. So maybe they've implemented something that works better for them than irons. And at that point, it's a preference thing. We can sit here and debate this for the next hour.
I'm not saying they don't work better. And just to be clear, if you put me in a match setting, I shoot better with a dot than I do with irons. It's my carry gun has irons, just so we're clear.
No, I think it's an interesting conversation to kind of go about that. So I think we can put that one to bed because it's very, contentious. But I'm curious about the rifle thing.
Wait, before we go to rifles.
I don't find it that contentious, but that's
While
fine.
we're on pistol red dots, what is objectively the best dot size for competition, since there's obviously no such thing as give or take? There's obviously just the best one for all situations. What is that?
3.2 MOA.
Okay. All right, on to rifles.
Okay, what do you want? What do you want to talk about?
Well, yeah, you said you were going to, a rifle book is coming out soon, right? And you're focusing on rifle training.
Yes.
Everyone knows you for handgun, but what's your journey in the world of rifles? How was that? Because I feel like that was something that probably started earlier for you.
Yeah, so a challenge was laid down to me by a friend of mine who does, he has a background in special operations. That's where he's from. He's like, hey, pistol shooting's on point. This is a great shooter. This guy can shoot. Hey, your pistol shooting's good. You taught me a lot with pistol shooting. I've kind of adapted a lot of these concepts for rifle. You should check it out. And I went and trained with him for a few days. And I was like, this is very interesting. I like this style. So the style of shooting that we do with rifles, that kind of got me into rifle shooting. So I'm not interested in 3-gun style shooting. So what I mean is close range USPSA targets where you slap 2 on them and you're good to go. And then you, typically in 3-gun matches, then you put the gun on some kind of a brace and then you shoot plates at 200 yards or something. It's typically one of those two things, right? Either you're shooting really far at relatively small targets or you're just hosing close range targets quickly. That's 3-gun style shooting. And honestly, that doesn't really interest me. But the style of shooting that we were doing was very similar to USPSA shooting, just with a 5.56 rifle and a red dot. Really considering the scoring zones, doing hit factor scoring, fast manipulations, reloads, that kind of stuff. Transitioning from rifle to pistol. I would call it operator style shooting. That's the style of shooting that you see from, certain segments of special operations. But it's not something there's a game built around. It's just kind of its own thing. It just lives out there in the ether. There's not a game for it. But like that style of shooting, I thought was very, very interesting. So that's kind of what I got hooked into that. I've been training it, working on it. And yeah, I mean, that's what I've been up to.
So what particular rifle are you working with on this? You said 5.56 rifles, so I'm sure everyone wants to know like what rifle and optic and stuff are you running with that?
I was just going to ask that, just what the
Sure, so
looked like, yeah.
So you just take a plain Aero Precision rifle. I have different guns. I have shorter guns with muzzle devices. The guns I actually prefer shooting A2 hider, like A2 flash hider on just a plain Aero Precision rifle with a 2-stage trigger and a Holosun red dot on it and a bad lever. With that stuff, like that's pretty much everything I need, and a sling, of course. So shooting that rifle, just very plain, nothing really fancy, but shooting it extremely aggressively from 0 to probably 75 meters, like really aggressively, and then being able to hit man-sized targets to 400 meters, like that style of shooting.
I fucking love that. I fucking love that.
Yeah. So the type of rifle that I'm using is like the type of thing, like, I mean, it's missing some stuff. So maybe there'd be a laser or IR device, whatever, but it's just, it's just a slick rifle for that, that you'd use for that sort of thing.
Are you picking an arrow because you want a rifle that you can just beat the fucking wheels off of and not care about? Like, it's like, it's going to work, what it is, and it works really well. But you're like,
to be honest, a JP would be counterproductive to what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
Building the rifle tighter and more accurate and shit, like that doesn't, it's like, I don't need that. That doesn't help me. Like, I just want a rifle that fucking works.
And you don't need, at that point, if you're just trying to work on this sort of thing for what you're doing, you don't need to go buy a fucking Knights. Like, you can just run an Arrow and Holosun and just go crush it and go work on these drills.
I think buying that shit is dumb. Honestly, it's dumb. I mean, it's what's interesting about rifles is they have so much capability on paper.
Uh-huh.
Like there's so much you can do with them in theory, but like if you look at reality and the way these things really get used, you don't do any of those things. Not really.
Do you have a magnifier?
No.
Oh, okay.
Do you run quad rails?
No.
Shame.
We had the same conversation pretty much with Otter Creek Labs. They make silencers. Well, one, are you going to get into silencers? Two, the conversation was like, our shit's really durable. This is from Otter Creek Labs. He's like, my shit's really durable. And everybody's like, it's going to fall apart in 1,000,000 rounds. And then nobody's going to ever shoot a fucking 1,000,000 rounds through it. So, I mean, your arrow's perfectly fine. It's great. So, yeah, why don't you shoot silencers? I figure if you're, getting into that sort of thing.
Go buy a polonium.
Yeah.
Shoot silencers?
Yeah, use a silencer, dude. No, not put it on the gun and shoot it. Put it on the ground and shoot it with your rifle.
Right, that's what I meant. Yeah, that's what I meant.
I don't like what's the point of that?
They look cool.
I don't understand. They do look cool.
They do look cool.
I've been to some rifle classes where there's a bunch of dudes with suppressors, and I'm like, I don't really know the point of that.
Well, outside the obvious point of like sound suppression, right, and dropping your decibels.
Yeah, but what is the point of me giving a shit about that? I don't care. We're here in protection.
No, I mean you are, but I mean at the end of the day, so you do get some sound suppression, but there is a recoil reduction piece that goes with it, and there's also if the can is built correctly, there is an accuracy enhancing piece to it as well. A can that is built correctly will actually slightly improve the accuracy of your rifle.
So let me also break down that
putting the suppressor on there would be kind of counterproductive for me.
Okay.
It's like making the gun better is not like, I don't really care about, like, for example, today I taught, a competition pistol class, but I taught it with my Glock with a not modified trigger, just a Glock. I mean, because that to me, that sends the message better. Makes a good example for the students that, hey, this isn't about equipment. This is about training and building your skills and building your fundamentals. Like, that's an important thing, especially when you start doing military law enforcement training. You don't want to show up with a competition gun. Like, I don't need to make my gun better. A good goal for me, I've done some rifle training in a military context. I have the most lightly modified rifle there. That's good. That sends a good message. Makes a good example.
I guess the question, if you're going to be doing training with law enforcement and military guys a lot more in the future, you'll see these guys running suppressors. And there's a big push for the military to go suppressed on everything. There's a big push for a lot of people in law enforcement to go to suppress.
The justification for that stuff is pretty fucking weak. So, like, law enforcement, like SWAT teams will say, hey, we have the suppressor so we can distinguish our gunshots from their gunshots. And you're like, okay, whatever. Military guys, I mean, I've seen, hey, we put the suppressors on for this CQB run because it's better for the dogs. We're going to send in first. Something like that. Like, I mean, the suppressor, I mean, it's cool for them to have that. Like, I don't need that shit. I'm not out. I'm not going on operations like secretively shooting people. So I personally don't have use for a suppressor, and I could give a fuck if I have one.
I think in a civilian context, the biggest and to an extent only advantage of a suppressor is in the event of a home defense shooting that you don't go fucking like deaf.
Yeah, but at the same, so I'll counter that point. I mean, at the same time, and there's an auditory exclusion thing that's going to happen in that scenario, and hunters experience it too. Like, yeah, we're still getting damaged, but your brain is like, okay, I'm getting ready to pull the trigger, turn it off, and it's a weird science there on how that works. But the argument can be made. I've known guys that have kicked doors for a living without suppressors that don't have major hearing loss.
You get hearing damage typically from loud noises and a sustained sort of thing. Like jet engines are the worst, right? I mean, gunshots, I mean, I don't know about inside a structure, but like gunshots they're not as destructive as people think for their hearing. It's not a good thing, but it's not as bad as people would think it is.
So it's not the B-52 crew chiefs I know that like can't hear shit because they listen to fucking jet engines all day.
Jet engines are literally the worst thing ever for your hearing.
Yeah, no, that
for sure.
I think the thing for me with it is like I find it makes the shooting experience a lot more pleasant, and so I enjoy shooting suppressed, and I think it's a big thing for me. And so for me, it's a personal enjoyment thing. And
I like that. I mean, I'll be honest. I prefer my A2 hiders over my comped rifle for exactly the same reason.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things that it's like a suppressor, if you have the ability to own one, is exactly like having an SBR AR lower. Like, if you have the ability to own one and you live in a state where you can have one, shame on you for not having one if you have the means to have one, because it's just nice to have. It's nice to have the ability to be like, we're going to knock us some hearing damage off of this gun, right? Like, you should be able to have that in your toolkit. It's not necessarily like I'm trying to be like an assassin, because there's no way I'm going to make a 5.56 rifle an assassin's rifle with the silencer. But I am going to be able to help my hearing a good bit, and I've caused enough permanent hearing damage to myself over the years working at ranges and shit that, like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and opt for anything I can do to help with my hearing loss. And for that, it's great. And I tend to like having that option available to me. So I would say don't discount the value. But, like, especially for rifles, like handgun suppressors, that's just because it's nifty and I can make 147 subsonics go, silly quiet and have fun on the back 40 and just go shoot some bullshit, right? And 22 suppressors because it sounds like a pellet gun. But rifle suppressors are like defensive utility and or just because I don't want to blow my ears out shooting a deer.
The fastest way to make a handgun unreliable is to put a suppressor on the end of it. Like, no shit.
You gotta get you gotta pick your silencer, pick your handgun and all that shit properly to make sure and vet it to make sure it runs the way it should. And
you do, but my point still stands for the average person. Hey, I'm going to buy a Glock 17, put a red barrel in it, and buy a suppressor. And, oh, God, why doesn't my handgun run now? Well,
Glocks are also really bad suppressor hosts.
We're also talking the most popular handgun in the United States.
I think we're going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, we'll move off of the suppressor discussion. And I go back to the rifle side.
This is another ping and transfer episode.
Yeah. But when it gets to the question on the rifles, like, where are you going to go? Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was just going to ask what you think of LPVOs in general, Ben. I know you said that you have a red dot on the rifle right now. I personally like LPVOs a lot. I went from a red dot to an LPVO just in the past maybe month or so. Just want to know your thoughts.
LPVOs are fine. There's obvious advantages, right? It gives you a ton more capability at distance. Sure. Especially a good one. You have a ton more capability. To me, that's not capability that gets really used. And I don't there's no reason for me to put that on my gun for shooting in the way that I'm shooting.
Okay, that makes sense. It's one of those things, in my opinion, it's nice to have, even though you're likely to never need it. In that 1% of a 1% situation, I just think it's a good thing to have the extra magnification. I can shoot a red dot out to 400. I've done that before.
Sure.
But I shot it at matches where there was just a white target sitting in the middle of a field at 400 yards. And I got to thinking, I can make the hits, but if I ever actually have to shoot a thing at 400 yards, it's probably not going to be standing still with a white jacket in the middle of a field. You know what I mean?
Well, sure. But again, in a practical context, you have a problem with legal justification, target identification, all sorts of things shooting somebody 400 yards away.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
But I understand why you'd want to have that on your gun. But again, it's not capability that I need for anything.
I think the most controversial thing you said about your rifle was the bad lever.
I was getting ready to say I was going to ask the bad lever.
The way that I use pretty much exactly. It's pushing down on my bad lever. I push down on it from outside the trigger guard. It sits outside the trigger guard. You can push down and reload. The way that I use the rifle, and again, the style of rifle shoot I'm doing is fast manipulations, reloading the gun, that sort of stuff. The bad lever makes life way, way better.
That makes sense. I think
way better.
It doesn't inherently. One more thing. I'm getting imping. It doesn't inherently make your rifle less safe, especially for a guy like you that shoots literally for a living, or a guy I don't know, that shoots a lot more than the average person. But when your average person puts it on their gun and they don't train around it, I think that is where the issues can come from, and that's why people will be like, "Well, I had one on my rifle and I had an ND with it, so I'm going to take it off." And it's well, yeah, you shoot 200 rounds a year, so I don't know what you expected to happen because you don't train at all with it.
Yeah, the bad lever makes it. It's not something you see a lot in 3-gun circles, but a standing reload from bolt lock into your rifle, that's a very good skill to build. Bad lever makes life a lot easier. Pulling the bolt back and locking it back, way easier with the bad lever. That kind of stuff. The rifle's way easier to handle. I feel if people don't train with it, or they feel like it's an ND machine, it's well, then you probably shouldn't have that. But again, my bad lever, I sweep down on it. If I push it down from outside of the trigger guard.
So I guess the question that I have when it comes to rifle handling and stuff like that is, when the way you shoot your gun and you build your grip on the rifle and all that stuff, like you talked about, do minor differences really matter for you at this point with what you're doing? If we're talking about if the gun doesn't have a bad lever or does have a bad lever, if the gun has a vertical foregrip or an angled foregrip, or it doesn't, if the gun has an LPVO or a red dot, do these things kind of end up mattering to you at this point of it's a gun, fuck it, I'm going to go shoot?
Well, yes, it's a gun, but having a bad lever versus not's a big fucking difference.
Okay.
It's a big difference. It changes the way that you do important manipulations on the gun. It changes them a lot.
I would agree.
Right?
I would agree
so,
with that. But
that would be a big training difference to me.
But vertical foregrip or optic or any of those things, do those kind of change the way you handle the gun as far as movement, recoil management, things like that? Or do you just kind of you're at the point of the gun's gonna just be the gun, and as long as I have a rifle that I know I can shoot well, it doesn't matter if it's an Arrow or a PSA or a Daniel Defense or a Knights, I'm just gonna pick it up and fucking shoot it.
Right. But to be honest with you, I'm not sure there's a big difference between those rifles for anybody. Not if you use them in a practical setting. That's the key. sure, like some guns are built tighter, like better tolerances or whatever, and they print a tighter MOA or whatever on the target. Sure, but when you're using the rifle in a practical setting, like what fucking difference does that make? It's kind of like the inherent accuracy of your pistol, like whatever that is, doesn't typically matter a whole lot in a USPSA setting, does it?
I mean, that's pretty accurate as a statement, and it gets to a point that I've had for a long time for people is like, you guys are like trying to like argue about like, well, I need an AR that's sub MOA. It's like, my guy, you're a 6 MOA shooter using 4 MOA ammo. Like, you just need to get better.
I was going to say, coming from a guy that's an AK shooter, like a lot, accuracy, especially in a practical / combat style rifle, is not as important as people make it out to be. You know, I shoot an AK-74 a lot of the time that prints about 2 MOA. And it does everything that I need it to do. So, and I know I'm the odd man.
Yes.
I'm the odd man out in this chat for that, because
no, you're not an odd man out. The only problem with the AKs is fucking reloading them fast.
I was going to say, well, you can get quick. So I bought down in Arizona. There's a guy whose Instagram handle is Ronin. I bought his custom Lee Armory AK-74 off of him, and with just a little bit of work, that gun, I can keep up with your average AR guy pretty easily, and on a good day, I can keep up with some top end AR guys. There is a nuance to reloading the gun, but once you get it down, you get the reps. You're gonna be a little slower, yeah, because there's more movement there, but it's not as slow as people think it is. And 545 is just a pussycat of a round to shoot. It's got less recoil than 5.56. So
I do like 545. I like the idea of it a lot.
I do have a question for you on that with like handling though, Ben. Like when it comes to ARs and like you have what you know, how much of the things that you know and you already know how to work with any given AR, M4, M16 pattern kind of rifle that you would get handed, does it translate over when you grab something else? Or like, do you know you have to change certain things about the way you handle a gun, and how much of that mental computing kind of goes into it when you get handed an AK or a SCAR or something like that? Not counting bullpups because they're not real rifles.
Sure. Handing an AK, I'm worthless. Like, I can do the shooting part with an AK. Like, I can grip it and mount it properly, look at a spot, transition the gun well, shoot it aggressively. But as far as doing that quickly, like that requires training and acclimation to that gun. I mean, it's same as if I wanted to be really tuned up with an AK, it'd be requiring regular dry fire practice with an AK, like reloading it quickly, mounting it, transitioning it, all of that stuff. Like, I would acclimate quickly, but I still require acclimation. Like, the idea that you're going to hand somebody a different gun with different controls and they're going to have the same level of performance, that's not really going to happen unless their level of performance is really low.
I was going to say, you might have the same level of performance until you have to do a reload. Or in the case of the AK, especially with safety, like, even coming from the lower high ready and getting that safety off, that's a completely different movement than, you know, your AR, your FAL, your G3, you know, and even your SCAR. The SCAR is relatively the same as the AR control-wise once you do your initial load. The AK is just, it's completely separate manual of arms, except for the pulling of the trigger.
I guess a question that comes into that as well is, so I did look up PCSL a little bit while we were talking, and I like what I see. And when it comes to that kind of practical gun handling and the way that we work with rifles and stuff as, you know, regular dudes that own ARs and Glocks and shit, and we want to get into shooting matches like this, do you think a match like this if we can help it get teeth, could actually be that kind of next generation gun culture match that we could all kind of look into a little bit. Because
definitely. So I think the key things with the rifle to me is the distances should be realistic, which is like people don't like that with the rifles. They don't like shooting like relatively close range, or they'll always put in something that fucks over people that don't have magnification in a lot of these matches, which I think is stupid, but that's what they like to do. You need to be testing people's manipulation ability as far as mounting the rifle, like reloading the rifle. And there's not a match that does this that I know of, but transitioning from rifle to pistol using a sling. Obviously, there's a lot of issues around that people wouldn't like doing that in a competitive setting, but those are regulations that really train. And testing those in a match setting is cool. It's just that they're not really built to test that.
Well, that actually brings up a thought that I had. That like you go to 3-gun matches, like when you're done with a gun, you have to put it in a bucket, right? Like when you're done with it, it has to go in a bucket. And you're like, there is no reholster a handgun. There is no, transition to pistol off of a sling. Like that's not a thing, right? And even if you had like a rule in a match saying like you can't transition to pistol off of a sling, unless the gun is shot dry, right? Like you have to shoot your rifle dried before you go to your pistol, so that we know we have a clear gun when you go to your pistol, for a safety reason.
That's how the matches around me do it. Or the one that I went to in particular that I liked the most. If your rifle wasn't dry before, like you always had to keep it slung on you, which I think was good. They got around it by, okay, you're done with the rifle portion of this stage. You're going to drop your mag, clear it, and RO will yell clear, and then you're allowed to sling it and just treat it like a stick. Then they don't care where it goes. I think that's kind of the best happy medium that you're possibly going to get out of it.
I was going to say, because at the end of the day, that's a safety thing. Like,
yeah,
you're not going to get around that in a competition setting. Like if we all get together and trained on the range, it's one thing. We know they're live guns. We know we're good. We know our ability level that we can, hey, safety, drop the rifle to a sling, go to handgun, shoot, reholster, anything we need to do. In a competition setting, now things are starting to change a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
To ask of an RO to run behind some guy who has a loaded rifle pointed at your face that the safety may or may not be on.
I was going to say, and I've worked with guys before where I've seen that, where they do that transition from rifle to handgun. The rifle's still loaded and it's hanging, but the safety's off. Like, dude, like, you need to put your safety back on. And that's kind of the liability piece I was talking about.
Stop this Black Hawk Down nonsense. Like that was.
Hey, so like I said, there's a lot of issues around the slings, but that would be really cool to be able to test them.
Do you have any hope for any matches that can start to push for this sort of thing? Like even if PCSL isn't something that takes off, like do we have like an option and a hope? Because I knowing now with a lot of what's happening with the BOD at USPSA, and that you're trying to also push into rifle stuff, and there's also a lot of other people who have been very big and growing gun culture stuff around them, right? Like we got, Lucas Botkin, we've got Grantham, we've got everybody else out there that's trying to run these matches. And like guys are showing up to USPSA matches, they're showing up to all these other things, but maybe it's not quite fitting them. Do you have hope that we could come up with something? Like this is something I really want to like dive into with you, because I feel like we're at that kind of watershed moment that's very similar to what happened with IDPA, where IDPA said, hey, you guys are a bunch of gamers and we're going to go do a combat match. And well, that just became, a fishing vest fest. But they tried, they did something. Are we at a similar point? And do you think somebody can actually really push that effort? Like, we have PCSL, we have some people that are trying, but like what are our chances of actually having it accomplished?
I don't know the chances, but it's a difficult thing. the big thing, as you guys, I think you guys understand, it's a unified rule set. It's having people on the same sheet of music. It's having people fundamentally rowing in the same direction. IDPA accomplished that for a little while, and they had a real direction and a real purpose for being. But I would argue, in many respects, IDPA accomplished its mission. I think they were formed in 1998, something like this.
Something like that.
Well, shit, right after that, USPSA started production division, limited 10 division, revolver division, to try to give, honestly, people like me, to give me a place to shoot. If it wasn't for production division, I never would have started USPSA because I wouldn't have had anything to shoot my gun in that was competitive. So you could look at IDP as kind of successful in that way, where they kind of spurred some change. Right now, the situation, as I see it, is we've got some FUDs like running the show that are kind of dicks. We've got a lot of people that wear jerseys and play dress up and kind of look like they're interested in getting better at shooting. There's you guys that are kind of really into it. Like you're like, we're trying all this different stuff. We're pretty open-minded. Like we want to try, this and that. And we don't really have a place that lets us kind of do the things we want to do. I think having a culture shift where there's like, hey, this kind of people, it's more about building skills, getting together, doing that kind of thing at the club level, having pretty serious matches at a higher level, different equipment rules that kind of make more sense. That kind of fit the modern situation better. Yeah, I think that's really doable. It's really possible. Could happen.
What do you think about the tactical games? Because I know that's something that's kind of cropped up and a lot of people like to talk about it, but at some level it's like super, interesting kind of idea as this concept, but that it basically just ends up being CrossFit for guns. Like, do you think that tactical games could be hijacked into being what we want it to be? Or is it just going to be forever this CrossFit thing?
I don't know. I've never been to a tactical games event, but I think it's highly unlikely that you're going to hijack something like that and turn it into a different thing. The other thing about tactical games, it's really not that big.
Yeah.
So, it's pretty much a non-entity as a thing. It's an interesting concept, sure, but you're right. It's basically CrossFit with guns. You're like, okay, cool. Like, have fun with that.
So do you? Oh, go ahead.
No, mine was off topic. I'll save it for later.
Well, I guess when it comes to the conversation with different matches and different ideas and stuff, like, do you like? I know we could do that. I know it's possible to do that, but I think maybe for context for a lot of the listeners, what would be necessary in your opinion besides just read off the same sheet of music, right? Because like we can say read off the same sheet of music, everyone's like understanding what we're talking about, and we're all on the same page of what the matches should look like, right? We get that. That's what USPSA has done. That's what IDPA has done. That's why those organizational bodies exist. The real question of it is like, what does it take to set up an organizational body that's actually worth a shit, that we can be able to host a match that says, hey, we're running a true concealment division. Hell, 2 concealment divisions. Concealment duty gun, so you're carrying a Glock 17 concealed versus concealment micro, you're carrying like a P365, right? How do you understand that concept of board of directors and sanctioning bodies better than I think a lot of us do? Is that a hurdle that can be overcome reasonably by
so
NC-level
my
guys?
idea right now, of course. So the idea, like, maybe you don't have a board of directors like that. The corporate structure, are you going to have a nonprofit thing? Are you going to have when people vote on this and that? IDPA is for profit. I'm not sure there's functionally a difference to the shooters as far as USPSA versus IDPA versus anything else. That part of it, I'm not sure matters, but you have some sort of a way this thing is structured at the organizational level. But the really important thing is getting people to buy in. So like an idea that I had, I say, hey, if you guys are going to do something different, let's have a conference, like a national thing. Anybody that wants to can come and we hash this thing out, and get actually input from people, what they want this thing to look like. And the important thing is getting everybody to move in the same direction. Like I said, once you have that, build it, however you want the corporate part of it structured, You can adopt all the rules from whatever game you like, USPSA, IDPA. You can take whatever rules you want. Rule mechanics can't be copywritten. Rules, the way that rules are written verbally, like the verbiage of the rule is copywritten, but you can copy the function of all the rules if you want. You can have hit factor scoring, you can have fault lines, no fault, whatever you want to do. It means you decide those things, and then maybe, like I said, port over people's classifications. I really think the thing that makes a national organization go, like really go, is a classification system that is functional, that is good. Like a classification system for shooting your rifle that was like hit factor scoring with like classifier stages that made sense. Like that would be, that would be very interesting for a lot of people instantaneously. So you have that. Once those things are in place, you're going to start attracting more people.
Okay.
So my question becomes, with that, especially once you get into the more practical side of things, all right, you're talking like shooting concealment and that kind of stuff. Do you see a rule set that is such a rule set that keeps people from just gaming it? Which at the end of the day, I think is what we've seen in like IDPA and USPSA to an extent, where it's okay. I'm going to do this, even though it's not practical. USPSA with the lights, the weapon lights, and like lock grips makes a solid brass light that pumps out like 30 lumens that nobody would ever carry on their gun, but it's a weight for the end of your gun. Do you see a way to like a rule set that keeps that gaming from happening and keeps it more in that practical space?
No. Now you can mitigate that sort of, I mean, the brass flashlights, those annoy you. You mitigate that stuff by having, rules in place where you just don't, I mean, you have the way to stop that is having rules that appear overly restrictive on the surface. Like for IPSC production, you're not allowed to make any sort of external modifications, of that nature. So it's like, that's just not allowed. But then what you end up running up against is you'll have guys who say, hey, I carry this gun this way. Why can't I shoot this? So there's always going to be the equipment rules are always going to be a friction point. There's always going to be some degree of gamesmanship around that stuff.
And I understand that because I'm at that friction point, right? So my normal carry gun, judge me if you want, is a Nighthawk GRP Recon with a Surefire X300 on it and 45 auto. That is my normal carry gun. That gun is right at the 50x limit for USPSA single stack with an 8-round magazine. I can't even run 10. I have to run 8s. And when I started to step into the USPSA realm and I was looking at my options, I've got a Glock 17, I've got a Staccato P, I've got my Nighthawk, which is really what I want to shoot because I spent the money on it. It's what I carry. It's what I use the most. That gun's right at the weight limit, and I'm stuck to 8-round magazines. So even when I'm looking at like that gamer aspect of, okay, well, can I shoot singles 10? Well, no, I can't. I'm over the weight limit. So I'm stuck with single stack.
The thing is, nobody at a local is going to break out a scale. It's fucking
You'd
fine.
be surprised.
Dude, you got some fucking lame-ass ROs at your place.
I was going to say, they do here. They'll break out the fucking postal scale here and weigh your gun.
Well, I mean, even like despite like divisions and stuff like that, I think it's more of just like, I think you can hammer out the divisions, and I feel it's even a thing that like if you want to lift and shift the whole division thing from USPSA or from IDPA or whatever for a new like a new match and a new organization. In theory, yes, you can do that, and it makes sense as a starting point. But it doesn't necessarily address the concerns of like guys that like I want to shoot what I carry purely because I want to get better with what I carry, and I want to have a division that I can work within about what I carry, even if I'm not trying to get the fastest score on practice score, right? Like if I look at my division, and my division is concealed carry duty, and I'm shooting a Glock 17 for concealed carry duty, right? Well, if I show up with a 17 and I shoot that, I want to have a match that I can gauge off of other people who also shoot that same division and know, okay, I ranked amongst people that were shooting from concealment, shooting the way we were shooting. I did X, right? Not overall score, not top 10, not whatever, but like in the group of people that I was shooting with, I was like 12th, right? Like that's a thing that people want to look for, and it's good. So I think that's an interesting challenge to kind of balance, and I wonder where that kind of goes. I feel like it's one of those things that you could actually play with the divisions a little bit differently and make it a little bit more practical for the landscape people you're trying to appeal to, right?
USPSA's divisions are fucked right now. Like they've got, I mean, it's a big problem because you have single stack and production, which both have pretty low attendance. You have revolver, which is a non-issue, like attendance wise. You got PCC, which is fundamentally different enough. It creates issues as far as stage design. You got L10, and then you have pretty much the new people shoot carry optics, and you have legacy, like a lot of gray hair and open and limited, and those guns are there's kind of like less people picking that up, I think, over time, but it's like they still exist. And like I said, there's kind of issues with limited, especially where you're like, hey, are we going to keep having people shoot 40 forever? Because it's kind of becoming a problem. So I mean, there's a lot of interesting issues with USPSA's division, for sure. And no clean solutions. You're not going to have any solution to make everybody happy. That's not going to happen.
I think divisions in general are one of those things. If you're looking at shooting your carry rig or your practical gun or your practical whatever, it's not possible for you to shoot in a division that other people are not gaming it. And that's going to obviously affect classifications, anything with classifications. Like you would have to put so many rules into production right now. There's still going to be people shooting them out there with things that are specifically modified to do the best under the rule set. There's unfortunately really no way around it. It's either you shoot against yourself to get better, or you game out your gun at least a little bit to try and get up there in the classification.
And then even then, like you said, in production, you have guns in production that are gamer compared to a Glock 17. Like the gun shop I work for now, we import Phoenix Redbacks. A Phoenix Redback Heavy is a production gun. Like it qualifies for production. It is in that category. Compared to a Glock, a Phoenix Redback Heavy is a completely different animal. That gun is not the same and shoots. It shoots completely differently. It doesn't.
I don't know if people winning, national titles are actually using much of those, are actually gaming it that much. Ben, can you go through the guns you've won national titles with?
Well, I would say most top shooters guns are heavily modified, shooting the most optimal possible equipment, probably modified past the point of reliability to where they're fucking around with their stuff a lot. That's the norm. I don't really fit into that, but that's the norm.
So your national titles, 8 of them, and then a lifetime ban. What guns have you won those national titles with?
Either Berettas, which are, I believe I changed the hammer spring on those, or Tanfolios, which weren't modified. Like my Tanfolio Extremes are not modified. But in fairness, those are much different guns than what was popular in the noughties, I guess, in the 2000s. It's a lot different gun.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. I think if you're shooting it truly to get better at shooting and not to, you're either shooting it to get better or to get a cool higher letter on your classification. You can shoot it for both. I'm kind of shooting it for both right now and violating my own rule, but it's hard to get mad whenever you're shooting a stock Glock and you're getting upset that you're getting beat out by people with Shadow 2s that shoot more than you.
Oh, and that's me right now. Like I'm looking to step into the space with my Nighthawk because that's what I carry, and I know the division I get stuck in with that. I'm either going to be the only guy there, and I'm going to take first in my division every time because I'm the only guy there.
The problem solves
single
itself.
stack. The problem solves itself because I'm the only guy shooting a single stack. Or, there's going to be like one or two other dudes there, and I'm just putting myself on the clock to run my gun, my setup, out of a safari land because I run a retention holster from outside the waistband, and my club doesn't allow the appendix stuff. And that's where I'm at right now. It's kind of like, hey, do I want to step into this USPSA thing, or do I want to like take my membership in the club and try to start up like 2-gun action challenge match and advocate for that? Because that's personally like that's my ideal thing, like a rifle, handgun, and Carl Casarda and all of them are very controversial in the space right now. But the idea behind 2-gun action challenger match, I think, is, in my personal view, the way forward. That practical setting, that using the rifle, using the handgun, practical mixes in the athletic component, but not in such a way that it becomes CrossFit with guns. And I love the brutality matches, and I hate that the brutality matches have become a Patreon exclusive thing, which is sad because I think it's a good concept, and I think it would be there, and I think that's where the community wants to go as a whole, especially this newer generation of shooters like us on this podcast tonight. But the problem is like the brutality matches have been locked out by Patreon because InRange is like, well, if you're a Patreon subscriber, you get first access, and there's only X amount of slots. And by the time registration opens up to the public, everything's already full because the Patreon already took it.
Until more clubs local to everybody starts doing those style of matches, it won't happen.
And I agree.
Yeah.
It's really that simple.
Well, okay, look, the reality is there's room essentially.
Can anyone else
Ben,
hear him?
still there? Ben, still there?
Okay, well, until Ben...
Ben, yes?
Bueller.
Let's talk to Harambe while Ben's gone. Harambe, what do you think of all this? What's your ideal competition as someone who doesn't shoot competition?
Well, from everything I've heard tonight, it sounds like I need to just start my own club because none of this sounds like where I would fit in. I think we should, as a
podcast, start our own
podcast with our fan base, all 4 people that listen. I think we should start our own.
All right, we're gonna do a 2-gun match 1 year from today, August 20th, 2023, at the Mothman statue. Join our Patreon if you would like to be the first to sign up. It is, how much are we making our Patreon per month, guys?
$20 a month.
$69.
$420.69 a month.
I'll actually just
All right,
get
we're
you
going to
one
go
for
back
free.
to $20 a month. If you sign up for that, then you will get to shoot this match that...
It's inside the IRS building.
Fuck, I was asking something. Jesus Christ.
Oh my god!
No. Since we're doing it at the Mothman statue, the actual match is on Needy Road at the ATF headquarters in West Virginia.
We're walking a dangerous line right now, guys.
Ethan,
Yeah, how about
Ethan,
Yeah.
get rid of all of this.
What? No,
Get rid of all
it
that.
stays. It stays.
No, that stays.
I think Ben might be getting back on here. Ben, can you hear us?
I'm here.
There we go.
Awesome.
So we were talking about, the whole idea of a new match and new locations to run a match. So
We have decided in the past 2 minutes we're going to start our own match as a podcast.
and we're going to host it outside the ATF building in West Virginia. Apparently,
Nope. No, we're not.
Said outside of, they have a range. I would hope.
Inside.
they probably do.
It's at 244 Needy Road in West Virginia.
See, I just want to have a match out in front of the warehouse at PSA so I can take all my shell casings and throw them at the front door because of all the fucking transfers I've gotten from them.
Yeah, the thing is they already do that. It's called AK Masters, and they do it every year.
Sorry, what were we talking about before you cut out 2 minutes ago? Because I am fucking lost.
We're starting our own club. Or was
No,
that
before that.
Before that.
I am not entirely certain.
Benjamin? Benjamin?
I have no fucking idea, dude. Come on.
Benjamin? Can I call you Ben? Anyway, Benny. So here's what I'm thinking. we start our own. We put you as president because you know what the fuck you're doing.
I think we should have elections. I think I'd be a good president.
You know what? Shut up, freaking Olight. We're gonna call it the Mothman League, and
Nope.
It's gonna be the best. We're gonna have all the cool rules. We're gonna allow appendix. You can transition. You could be fat. You could be skinny.
So if you have people transitioning from rifle to slinging the rifle to a pistol out of a holster in a match, that'd be fucking crazy. Like,
what about?
Like I said, that would be cool as fuck. But there's tons of issues with that. Good luck.
What about if somebody DQs, the entire squad gets to slap them in the face?
Yeah, that's a good rule. I like that.
That's good. So here's my question.
Man, if you guys really want to upset people, we could talk about transitioning from rifle to pistol, like for training. Because if you think about the context where you would do that, your rifle would be empty. So it's really quick for training, though, if you just put the rifle down and transition it to the pistol, leaving it loaded and not safing it. That's really fast, and that's probably what you do in a practical setting, if the rifle just stopped working. But
just throw your
people
loaded
wouldn't
rifle.
even want to discuss doing that with live ammo.
Just throw your loaded rifle
See
at
what I
the
mean?
berm. Just throw it at the berm really hard.
Yes, just throw it at the berm. There you go. Fuck that rifle.
So
That's
here's
what the
my
buckets are practiced for.
You're
Just throwing it.
Here's my question, because 3 guns come up a couple of times, and I am a proponent, and everybody in here except for Ben knows it. I am a big proponent of the gospel of the gauge.
Ooh.
Do you see a competition setting where shotgun can be done practically?
Yeah, skeet.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
I was going to say outside of skeet or sporting clays.
Trap.
Understood. No.
Door breaching.
Five stand, maybe?
I think we might have lost Ben again. I'll
He's
answer
cutting
for
out.
him since I am probably just as good of a shooter as he is. No.
Comedy podcast.
That's essentially what this is.
I've seen actually. Oh, the range local to me is doing a 2-day 2-gun match where the first day it's rifle and handgun, and the second day it's shotgun and handgun.
Are you just gonna leave?
I want a 3-gun match that is carbine, bolt gun, and handgun.
Ooh, that would be.
They did that.
Wasn't that Cornfield Brutality?
No, that was Desert Brutality last year. They did that.
Can we get a 4-gun match scheduled?
Why limit it to 4?
Infinite gun match.
Okay, so you start off with a revolver. No, hold on. You start off with a single
gun
shot
game
black
on
powder.
COD.
Yeah, it's COD, yeah.
It's gun game.
You start off with a single shot black powder, then you go to a black powder revolver, then you go to a revolver.
You're describing gun game.
Okay.
Then you go 2 guns in each hand.
What point do you get the javelin out?
Well, the javelin's not anti-vehicle only, so you wouldn't be able to use that. Next question.
I mean, we're seeing how effective St. Javelin is in the Ukraine right now, so I feel like that is a pertinent...
I had a good question, and I forgot it.
Can I ask Ping to say nuclear?
Don't remind me of that.
Nuclear.
There we go.
Hey, it's Ben's alive.
Can I ask 7-7 to say anything?
Wait, Ben's back.
Is he?
Ooh.
Is he?
He's
I
back.
don't think he is.
Ben, can you hear us?
Benny, how are the Jets?
He just said in chat he thinks he's going to bounce off. Okay, well, regardless. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but thank you for coming on, Ben. It was a pleasure. Hopefully you
It was great.
Yep, he's gone. Okay.
Thank you for tuning in. Leave us a rating on Spotify, 1 star. Tell everybody in the world, all 7 million people, about the podcast. Tell them to leave a 1-star review on Spotify. Thanks.